arguably, I'm not even arguably, Penn State's best transfer portal addition to date, the number 11 overall prospect in the transfer portal rankings, Jeremiah Cooper, former Iowa State defensive back, has committed to the Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. It is a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions to talk about how Penn State adds Jeremiah Cooper from Iowa State. See, it's not just about, Penn State's picking up Iowa State players. It's about who they are getting. Versatile defensive back. He can play safety. He can play cornerback. He is an instant plug-and-play starter, former all-conference player at the Big 12. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions, as always, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. Thank you for joining me. NFL wildcard weekend. Saw the Bills just win a couple seconds ago, but we're going to talk about Jeremiah Cooper and what he brings to Penn State's defense. He missed most of the 2025 season, with an injury. But this guy, when he's at full strength, when he's able, and he can play free safety, could have him play strong safety, but I like him at the safety spot. So I'll give my reasons for where Jeremiah Cooper should play in this Penn State defense, why he's an instant impact player. And we'll also talk about just the other latest in the other news headlines, latest in the transfer portal. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat too. As we begin with easily Penn State's best overall transfer portal move, and that is adding Jeremiah Cooper. I mean, it took some time. You can't take any of them for granted, right? We saw other key Iowa State players go other places that, hey, Penn State would have really liked this player, right? But Jeremiah Cooper, the number 11 overall player, according to On3, that's not, at defensive back, at cornerback, at safety. No, this is a fringe top 10 player that other schools would have wanted, and rightfully so, on their roster. More than just an instant starter, instant impact player. He can be an all-conference player at the Big Ten level. I like him at safety, but he's versatile. So if Penn State, let's just say for the sake of it, right, it is football. For the sake of the conversation, you are going to have injuries at spots, at points in time. And that's what Jeremiah Cooper really brings, is that if he is available, which he will be, he's coming off of a knee injury that he sustained earlier in the season, in the first half of the season. So he will be fully recovered by the start of the 26th season here. But Cooper, I watched his tape from the 2023 season when he was an all-conference player in the Big 12. And this guy is so good at reading the quarterback. He is so good at sitting back, playing zone coverage, playing off the football, and just allowing, he's able to shadow receivers. So I would say that's his best skill set, is being at that safety spot and just being able to roam, play free, and play that kind of coverage. So I am hoping to see him at safety, which is why, I come on the show, I talk about Dejuan Lane going into the transfer portal, and this is an easy fix because Jeremiah Cooper is still out there, and Cooper at this point in time is a better player than Dejuan Lane. So Penn State not only gets an upgrade at the defensive back spot, they get somebody who's a little more versatile. Okay, so Lane primarily plays safety. He's good in coverage. I would say he's better as a tackler, but Cooper does everything. So Jeremiah Cooper joining Penn State, and that offsets, if not, it helps advance what Penn State wants to do defensively. I think he will be a much better fit. I know he will be a much better fit in Lynn's defense. Matt Campbell is very familiar with him, right? There's the veteran experience. He's proven it. So anybody that's concerned about, Penn State lost Dejuan Lane, this completely takes care of that move. So Jeremiah Cooper, though, can play a little bit of cornerback. Iowa State moved him around, but his best plays, that 2023 season, was outstanding. He had 5 interceptions, 10 pass deflections, and most of it was in back-off coverage. The way that he was able to read the zone and play in zone and just read the play, basically he would, the second the wide receiver would make a cut on some of these plays, he would basically run the route for the receiver. Jeremiah Cooper joining Marcus Neal, who's going to be a plug and play, and they're different kinds of players. Marcus Neal is that thumping safety. He's going to make a lot of hard hits. He's going to be basically that extra linebacker in the defense. And if anybody is concerned, this is strictly my opinion. Well, Penn State's adding another defensive back. Surely somebody's going to jump back into the transfer portal, right? As a result, I think that's what the Dejuan Lane move was. Unless we see differently, anything can happen, right? We see players, right? We're going to talk about that. Penn State picks up a running back, gets a recommitment from a running back, but also loses one in the process, right? So it's this constant attrition going back and forth. But Jeremiah Cooper can play anywhere. If it was specific, and you lost a safety, so you needed to pick back a safety. You needed to pick back up a safety. At cornerback, Penn State got a ton of cornerbacks, but they're going to run a 3-3-5, a 3-4. They're going to run a lot of defensive backs. So there is a need for guys in the secondary. I also think Dejuan Lane's move, had to do with the fact that, hey, Anthony Poindexter's at Tennessee. So don't just assume that, oh, well, Penn State picks up another Iowa State player. Surely they're going to lose one after this as a result. I would say that's not the case. There's plenty of room to go around. That's why some people, just they throw out, hey, these guys are afraid of the competition because and that might be the case, or you're just not privy to it, right? Because there was room for both Cooper and Lane to coexist. You didn't need one or the other. Both of them could have been on this team, and both of them could have made an impact. But hey, I see why people will make that assumption, will make that assessment, because there was room for both of them to exist at Penn State. But what a move. Best one overall. Like I said, there's really no arguing it. You have the transfer portal rankings. There are definitely other players, right, that Penn State at this point in time has added that will certainly make an instant impact. But I think it is very close between Marcus Neal and Jeremiah Cooper. That's how highly I think of Marcus Neal. But Jeremiah Cooper, according to the rankings, the transfer portal rankings, is so far Penn State's best addition. So we'll continue to go through this, the portal rumblings. Penn State is now over 30 transfer portal additions, and that's what we were expecting right from the beginning. There was just going to be a lot of movement this portal cycle, and Penn State got good news that they were going to get a running back out of the transfer portal, somebody they were extremely familiar with, but then they also lost a running back as a result in the process. So we got to discuss what it means for Penn State. That's good news, but also bad news. Coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, the college football playoff is here. We're getting towards the end of it, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. So here's why you'll love it. You get to use this profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. You can ride with the favorite if you think that team controls the matchup. You can take a shot on the underdog if you feel like an upset's coming, or build a parlay around the players, the moments you think will decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost. You go after even bigger winnings, and when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football, and there's no waiting around. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day over on FanDuel. All right. Penn State picks up a running back. They get a recommitment from Cam Wallace, which I thought, this is great news. This is phenomenal. The running back room gets even better, but you circle back around, and then Tikey Hayes is in the transfer portal now. Cam Wallace is really good. I've seen a lot from Cam Wallace when he has been healthy. Just a devastating injury. That was 2024. And for him to come back, honestly, as quickly as he did, because it was a double leg injury, which James Franklin had confirmed at the time. So when he was still the head coach and talked about it, but it shows, it puts a spotlight on just, hey, what did Cam Wallace go through? So veteran running back, preference between the two. Honestly, for the short term, it's Cam Wallace. Tikey Hayes is more eligibility, right? I like Tikey Hayes because, hey, he's a Pennsylvania guy from Aliquippa. He's actually he's a relative of Terry Smith. So there's all those Penn State connections and everything, the familial connections, the familiar and the family connections there for Tikey Hayes. So that you hate to see that from a Penn State fan perspective, from a feel-good story perspective. And Hayes has a bright future, but I also think Cam Wallace does too. If it wasn't for that injury, I envisioned a future backfield where Cam Wallace was it. And this was when James Franklin was the head coach and everything was kind of status quo, right? So this was about a year ago. Up before the firing, right? So a lot of opinions and projections have changed. But when he was playing and before that injury, I said, hey, Cam Wallace can be that 1-2 punch with Quentin Martin. So that was the idea. So now Penn State, in theory, when you look at it, has that future dynamic duo in the backfield, even though we don't know how it's exactly all going to be finalized because it is crowded. But for Penn State's sake, you have Carson Hansen, who is starting caliber and can score touchdowns and is a bruising running back. You have Quentin Martin with a ton of upside. You have now Cam Wallace back into the fold. You add James Peoples. There are 4 capable running backs. I am really led to believe that Penn State is going to have a running back by committee, that they should, I would say they should run multiple running backs, 22, right? 21 personnel where you actually have 2 capable running backs and just run bully football. You can go at the defense with Carson Hansen and Quentin Martin in a given formation, or you go James Peoples and Quentin Martin, Carson Hansen and Cam Wallace. All of those are capable football players. I would have liked to have seen Tikey Hayes in the mix there, but it's not like they're losing both. So they retain one. You can't, sometimes it's that case of you can have one, but not the other. That is one of those cases. So for eligibility's sake, Tikey Hayes, I think, would have been the better player to keep. But Cam Wallace still has, if I'm not mistaken, 3 years, at least 2, definitely could have 3 years of eligibility. So as Hansen will move on, right, that backfield's really going to open up. But I just think there are enough carries to go around between what Penn State now wants to do and have a truly run-centric focus and run a lot of 12 personnel. But I think there's a case for tons of running backs to get involved next season. Again, there is precedent here. Iowa State in 2024 divvied up carries. And what's even more impressive is that Carson Hansen had 13 touchdowns as it was, yet only 150 carries, give or take, right? I don't have their stats pulled up in front of me. But then RB2 had 120 and RB3 had, give or take, 90 to 95. There is precedent here for Penn State to run not 1, not 2, but 3 running backs in a committee and be successful next season. All those guys have talent. The true battle is going to be, because Carson Hansen is going to get a lot of run. I am eager to see how the depth chart shakes out at RB2 and RB3. That's going to be, you have to have a power structure. It's also good. I've said this about Allen and Singleton. You having a strong depth chart at the running back spot means that those guys are more likely to succeed. Those guys aren't going to have as much wear and tear. They're going to have better longevity. It's better for their health. It's better in game because then you don't give 30, 35 carries to one player and they're absolutely gassed at the end. You're able to save their energy throughout the game and give them a good, decent share of the carries. So I was surprised when Cam Wallace came back. I did not think he would recommit to Penn State. So Wallace, solid addition, but you also lose a running back in the process. So I'm glad I opened up the live chat because that's what we're going to get into now. Thoughts on Deshaun Burnett coming back for Penn State. So Burnett is just an athlete above all else. This guy played linebacker, defensive end, tight end for his high school at the time. So he can play a ton of different positions. And I'm speaking to that because of the athleticism, because of his ability overall. Defensive end, he's going to have to refine the technique because, like I said, he played a ton of offense. He would make big plays in the passing game once upon a time. And I know that's high school, but it's his ability to do so many different things. He just has to refine his technique. I'm glad he's picking Penn State to do that. He still has 4 years of eligibility, but Burnett is definitely a depth piece right now. He could make his way into the rotation, but he probably needs to add a little more weight there. He showed that pass rushing ability at that linebacker spot in high school, which is why Penn State took him as a defensive end originally, because they said, okay, well, you're too big to play linebacker. Let's have you add about 10, 15, 20 pounds, and we'll get you at defensive end and kind of put him on that timeline that's similar to, I mean, I don't want to compare him to Abdul Carter for the skill set. Okay, Abdul Carter is an exception. He's not the standard, but that's what Penn State's trying to go for here, is they are taking a super athletic linebacker who does a lot of things well, and they want to make him better at defensive end, where they can just refine the technique at one spot. So I like this. I like that for Penn State's sake, but mainly for the depth chart at this point in time. I still think Penn State needs edge defenders, which is why I don't think they're done in the transfer portal. Now, I don't know how many superstar. Jeremiah Cooper's kind of the last one where this is a slam dunk. This is a grand slam. I can come on the podcast and say, hey, how great this move is. The rest of them are going to be strategic and talking about, well, he's a depth guy and somebody with 3 to 4 years of eligibility left, so his timeline's a little bit different. Depth's important, but how much analysis I'm going to be able to provide there with comparing, contrasting between Cooper and some of the other portal players that Penn State's still trying to pick up. It would shock me if they're able to get somebody that is another instant starter, all-conference caliber player, mostly because those guys have already announced their portal commitments, right? And Penn State's just it's the attrition of the portal. We still got a whole week. We still got a full second week of the transfer portal here, where I guess since unless you are officially signed, and even that's not really the case, right? Because Damon Williams went into the transfer portal, or he was supposed to, but then the Big Ten and Washington teamed up together. A transfer portal is going to be crazy. But I guess if you are not signed, then that second week of the portal could be interesting. I don't think Penn State's going to lose any players like that. I think it's mostly done for the most part as far as the departures go. So, but in short, yeah, Deshaun Burnett is nice to keep around because of the upside, right? He's a former 4-star prospect in the state of Pennsylvania. Jeremiah Cooper is perfect for 5 defensive back sets because he plays both safety and corner, and you can line him up anywhere. Okay, I say he's best in zone. I like him as a back off free safety that reads but basically he's playing man with most of his best plays came in a back off coverage. It wasn't necessarily he's sitting in a bubble, but he had a man assignment. And then when the man was in his zone, he was able to close the gap. So most of the plays that I saw, so Cooper can play man, he can play zone, he can play safety, he can play corner, he can play back off, he can play press man. I would say his best attributes are back off coverage, zone, and allowing the play to develop and read a quarterback or read a receiver's movements. Because he is physical, but like I said, there are things that he's slightly better at, and he's not built like a press corner. He's built more like an athletic corner. So at 6 foot, just close to 200, he's listed at 195 per Iowa State's website. So he's not this physically imposing cornerback, but he's also not going to get pushed around. Okay, his best, if you want him to make plays for Penn State next season, have him operate outside of the box, have him play back off coverage. And because here's the thing though. And you know what? I'll save it for after the break, right? Because I think it's interesting to talk about. Jeremiah Cooper. Well, why didn't he live up to those expectations? Why did he peak in his sophomore season in 2023, but then took a step backwards in 24, and then 2025, he was injured? Well, why was he so great 2 years ago? Well, we'll discuss it, and I'll explain why coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The new year is here, if you didn't already know, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks, how it feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's your one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. You have bedding, mattresses, storage solutions for every room. Wayfair makes it easy to start the new year fresh. Wayfair is everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. So whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and your budget. You can pick out new bedding, accent pillows from Wayfair, and it will completely change how your bedroom feels. It's cleaner, calmer, more put together. You will also love that you can find pieces that will match your style without spending a fortune. Shopping is easy, delivery is smooth, and everything arrives exactly as expected. Honestly, makes getting back into the routine after the new year feel a lot more manageable. So get organized, get refreshed, get back on track this new year for way less. Head over to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That is WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Joining me here on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, I've actually bumped the Sean Clifford card here. So we go into the final segment of this live show, and I know the Eagles are getting ready to play. So, right, I wanted to have this live show and then pass it off to the Philadelphia Eagles, right? So Jeremiah Cooper, did he peak in 2023? I mean, it's a fair argument to make. The guy had a super season, but then 2024, okay, fell off a little bit. 2025, we never got to see him reemerge for Iowa State because it was cut short due to a knee injury. Cooper, and that 2023 season, I don't believe is an anomaly. Iowa State, again, this points back to the systemic issues that Iowa State had, as opposed to player development, coaching, all those things. Depth. The simple answer here, folks, is depth. Jeremiah Cooper wasn't allowed to play in his primary role because of depth concerns or, hey, you are our best option here. We want you at the safety spot. We want you to play in this hybrid role for us, but we can't because we lost a depth player at this spot. So that's not just, oh, you lose a starter in another spot. That's one thing. But if you have serious attrition to another spot, that's what Iowa State dealt with. And I don't think people understand the fine line that Iowa State was walking, because that was a team that was expected to contend for a Big 12 title in 2025. Most of the naysayers that will criticize Penn State, or just whether it's serious or it's unserious, right? We see a ton of people that will go around and say, well, Penn State is getting a middling Big 12 team over there. Okay, add some more context, right? That Iowa State team finished 8-4 under the circumstances. Rocco Becht was hurt. They dealt with injuries on the offensive line, just like everybody does, right? That's not subjective to Iowa State. You lost both Jeremiah Cooper and Jontez Williams the same week in week 4. And when they lost their two best defensive backs with no other comparable talent to replace them, that's when the season took a nosedive. That is when they went on that 4-game losing streak. You lost not one, but two superstars that really held your defense together. And lo and behold, Iowa State fell off. But that was the difference. See, that's the thing. Matt Campbell can only do so much to solve that. When you are the coach of a program that just doesn't have that kind of leverage. Well, Penn State has that. Penn State has the depth. Penn State has the experience. Okay, Iowa State, they had to build a certain way. And Matt Campbell, the deck, I don't want to say was stacked against him, but it certainly wasn't stacked in his favor. So if you lost a player like Jeremiah Cooper, you might have had to turn to somebody who was just getting started and was in their developmental stages. They weren't supposed to play this season, but you found them as the second guy on the depth chart because Iowa State couldn't accumulate the depth like a Penn State can at the Big Ten level, like a lot of other programs can at the Big Ten and the SEC level, and even some in the Big 12 and the ACC. But that's the difference. So if Jeremiah Cooper is unavailable for a portion of time, or if anybody is, you have somebody that can come right in. And again, I talk about depth at the running back spot. You can say the same thing at a lot of other positions. You can say the same thing at offensive line. You could say the same thing in the secondary. I want Jeremiah Cooper. I want Jamison Patton, Marcus Neal, Darius Dixon, Davian Collins, Zion Tracy, all these guys to rotate in to prevent injury, but also because they can all play. They are all comparable. One is not significantly better than the other, but there are only so many defensive back spots that you can play at a given time. The problem was for Iowa State is that Cooper couldn't play in his best role because they needed him elsewhere to cover other leaks in the boat, so to speak. So Cooper, I fully expect to, with D'Anton Lynn as his defensive coordinator, to make him get back to that level. Because now Penn State has the leverage to put him in a spot to succeed and make the defense overall better because cornerback is locked down. You have Darius Dixon, Davian Collins, Zion Tracy, and all those guys are versatile. Heck, you can play those guys at safety. But then you lose Dejuan Lane. Oh, but you get Jeremiah Cooper. You get Jamison Patton. You get Marcus Neal. You still need some more guys in the secondary. I think that Penn State could make some more additions here in the secondary to definitely bolster it. But how many capable guys do they have right now? And there's only 5 at a given moment. You could have 5 defensive backs. Heck, I guess you could run some prowler. You could run 6 defensive backs, which I wouldn't put Penn State past them. I wouldn't put it past Penn State. D'Anton Lynn wants to run a hybrid defense. Terry Smith was the one who reinstalled the prowler package, so we know he's a big fan of it. He's definitely going to say, hey, we should run, Coach Campbell, we should definitely run some of this going into next season. And you play to your strengths. If you have a ton of defensive backs, play them. You now have Cooper. Patton's a quality starter. Marcus Neal's an all-conference player. The ones, I will say that because I can almost all but guarantee they play a full season. Neal's an all-conference player. I need to see more from Patton, right? I think he's a solid starter. I don't know about an all-conference player per se, but Cooper is that. I keep repeating Neal. Darius Dixon starting to reach that level. Zion Tracy battled injuries, but he is capable of that. We saw promise from Jameer Joseph as a true freshman. You retain Davian Collins. Those are all really talented players across the board. All of those guys can play. They're going to compete. The 2 deep at defensive back, best setup Penn State could ask for. Honestly, let's jump back into the live chat briefly. I know there's an Eagles game on, and I haven't gotten to a ton of the comments here. So, yes, we all agree. Cooper is a huge pickup. It is huge. Massive move for Penn State. The secondary is really going to be scary. This past secondary, I know, hey, Penn State season didn't work out well in 2025, but it was talented. The issue wasn't being able to get after the quarterback or stop the run. You have to put the secondary. You also have to put the secondary in positions to succeed. If you leave them all on islands, then they're not going to look great. And you're going to criticize the secondary. At some point, the pass rush has to get home. You can't cover forever. But most of these guys, whether it's in man or zone, and D'Anton Lynn putting them in positions to succeed, your pass rush has to get after the quarterback. Organically, sometimes inorganically, right? That's what a blitz is. To wreak havoc on the quarterback. But this is what Penn State wants to do from a fundamental standpoint. We're going to load up the box. We're going to put size in the interior of the defensive line. We're going to run odd man fronts and create pockets in the interior so that you can't just run up the middle at us. Because a lot of times opposing offenses this season just ran right up the middle at Penn State and Jim Knowles' defense, and they get 5, 6, 7, 8 yards on first down. And then you have second and easy. And then that's what happens. And Jim Knowles' defense could never get off the football field. And it's a vicious cycle. So what D'Anton Lynn is trying to do is, okay, you're not going to run right at us. We're going to make you either earn it or force you to pass the football against our star-studded secondary. Oh, okay. When D'Anton Lynn was at UCLA, but USC, that wasn't as good. No. When he was at UCLA, of all places, he had the #1 run defense in the country. That is not by accident. And had the #3 pass rush and the #11 total defense in terms of yards allowed. That is what D'Anton Lynn can do with this setup. I'm not guaranteeing that, they're going to have the #1 run defense again. They're going to have the leading pass rush in all of the country overnight. But I'm saying that's what he's capable of if you give him the pieces to install this defense, which is what Matt Campbell is doing. I don't think USC and Lincoln Riley did that. I think they got him a bunch of talented players, but they were misaligned with what D'Anton Lynn wants to do. D'Anton Lynn finally has the players and the personnel that more match what he wants to run schematically. So, yes, and it's funny, right? Because the comments continue to be, oh, it's just Iowa State 2.0. And I pointed that, I said, hey, Penn State is going to look very similar to Iowa State, but that's not an issue for me. These 20 players are mostly starting caliber and guys that project really well long-term. You weren't just getting the third and the fourth string players and guys that nobody wanted out of the portal. I think that is what people are trying to allude to, that, oh, you're just getting players nobody else wants. No, LSU wanted Rocco Becht. No, there were plenty of people that would want Carson Hansen as their starting running back, Benjamin Bramer and Gabe Burkle as their starting tight end duo, Trevor Burr as a starting guard. Anybody that's criticizing these moves for Penn State, Rocco Becht's a starting quarterback. Carson Hansen's a starting running back. 2 starting tight ends. Multiple starting defensive backs. Guys who can be all conference level. So, oh yeah, Penn State's just becoming Iowa State, or they're being selective and taking the best guys that can help them short-term and long-term. And everybody else neglects the fact that Penn State has retained over 30 current Penn State players. They're taking the best of both sides, best of Penn State, best of Iowa State. That was the point of this. I completely agree at wide receiver. They could still use the series. I'm not exactly sure who you're referring to. I think I have an idea. Or Porter. Quincy Porter. That'll be tough because he doesn't have a visit scheduled, and there is no mutual interest. I talked about that on a previous live stream, that Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham, Noah Rogers, all going to be tough to get. If I'm giving a chance for Penn State to land anybody out of those 3 former Ohio State players, it's Quincy Porter. Or, excuse me, it is Noah Rogers. Nope. Didn't mean to say that. Not trying to give anybody false hope. It's Noah Rogers because he visited. And he might have made a commitment. The portal stuff moves so quickly. So I might have missed the headline where that was the case. But I'm hoping that Rogers is still out there because they could certainly use him. Penn State would be interested in Isaiah Horton, but is Isaiah Horton interested in Penn State? Most likely not at this juncture. Penn State is losing so much, they have to backfill. Iowa State's the best option. They already know the system. Just can't get too reliant on them. Penn State, I mean, technically, yes, in terms of numbers, in terms of quantity, you're losing tons of guys to the NFL. That's a fact. You lost a number of players to the transfer portal. How many of those guys were better than the players that Penn State lost? Or how many of those players that Penn State lost were better than the ones that they're bringing in from Iowa State? I would say Amari Campbell. That's definitely one. TJ Shanahan would have been a starter. So you could make that argument. But who would you prefer, Benjamin Bramer or Luke Reynolds? They're either the same, or I think Bramer is slightly better because Reynolds still needs to develop a time. So long term, okay, if you're playing the long game, I suppose Reynolds, because he's got more eligibility. You still have Andrew Rapplier. That's the thing, though. You didn't lose Rapplier and Luke Reynolds. You lost just Reynolds. Okay, yes, you lost Andrew Olish as well, but I'm talking about contributors. If you lost your entire tight end room, and then you replaced and you backfilled with Iowa State players, then that's an issue. But you didn't. Your tight end room didn't flip over. Your offensive line room didn't flip over. You retained starters at a lot of key positions. Amari Campbell stings. King Mack stings. But you go and get Patton. You go and get Marcus Neal. You go and get Jeremiah Cooper. You go and get 3 linebackers from Iowa State. I don't think they're the caliber of Amari Campbell. But let's not pretend from a Penn State perspective or a non-Penn State perspective, people that want to dunk on Penn State and try to poke fun at this. Penn State, like I said, didn't supplement all these losses and have all these issues. And they're scrambling and just saying, well, we'll get Iowa State players. If that was the case, you would have seen all 50 Iowa State players end up at Penn State It's only 20. It's not even half of Iowa State's total roster that went into the portal. It's a significant portion, but Penn State and Matt Campbell were selective with it. All right, Eagles are underway. We're over our half-hour mark, so this is where I will leave things for now. We're going to have plenty more conversations as the portal is supposed to slow down, but who knows? It can speed up at any given time. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, thank you so much for joining me on an NFL Sunday. Appreciate it as always. If you're new to the show, like this episode, like the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around all of your favorite Penn State sports teams.